do whatever, right? So people's lives are in danger. So they have to project out, a certain number of days to give people enough warning, right? So let's look at another screenshot of this 3 days later. I believe this is Thursday of that same week, August 25th. And now look what the storm is projected. So notice, like on that previous slide, they thought on Saturday, the storm was going to hit right around here between, that looks like Jacksonville, between Georgia and the Florida border. But actually, in this updated forecast, Saturday they're projecting it to hit in the middle of the Carolinas. So I just mapped this out in Google Maps. So these forecasts are 3 days apart, and the projected path of the storm is basically off by 430 miles. So, I mean, that is a huge gap, and the Weather Service has to do this because the dynamics of the environment and the system are changing by the second, right? So if if they make this projection or forecast at the beginning of it when the hurricane hits the U.S. mainland, it's basically stale and out of date. So whatever warnings and stuff they put out, it's already, maybe bad information. Right? So if you look at this one, they've got to issue warnings all up until the whole eastern coast of the U.S. So I think this is like weather and maybe hurricane predictions and forecasting. I think it's a good analogy to use for project management. If you're not looking at your metrics on a smaller time window, you're probably falling behind. You're missing things that you can use to help your team. Anyone disagree or agree with looking at metrics on a more regular basis in tighter windows? All right, Kyle, you gave a thumbs up. We can do a Roman vote. All right, guys. Mainly thumbs up. All right, that's cool. Okay, so enough of the preliminaries. Let's go over the goals of the session, the stuff I want you guys to come away with. So part of using metrics more is you got to sell it to the people you're working with, because maybe they aren't using it right now. So I'd like to give you a couple of analogies to use to maybe highlight the importance of metrics. And I think that hurricane or weather forecasting in general is a great one to use. Of course, self-driving cars would be a good one. The cockpit of an airplane would be a great one. And of course, your dashboard on your car. Those are all like everyday examples that someone's going to just understand when you use equipment. Can anyone else think of additional examples to maybe sell somebody on the idea of metrics? It's an Apple Watch. Yeah, it does track heart rate and all that, my sleep patterns. Yeah. Your cell phone, the thermostat in this room would be another example.
Wellness points.
Yes, Terry?
Wellness points.
Wellness points. Oh, yeah, there you go. How about your freezer and refrigerator? Pretty basic stuff, right?
My bathroom's getting.
There you go. So if someone's, maybe pushing back, maybe use some of those daily examples, maybe reel them back in and say, hey, you know what? You're a fan of metrics, and you just don't realize it. The other topics I want you guys to come away with are, these terms here at the bottom. Basically, leading and lagging indicators, qualitative versus quantitative measures, and I'm just a big fan of that hurricane analogy. So any kind of forecasting, I think is something I want you to come away with, especially with quarterly planning coming up. So just a quick survey. For the previous quarterly plan, how many teams here actually achieved their stated commitments or goals? Oh, we've got some people in the back. Wow, that's cool.
Quarter's not over yet.
The quarter's not over yet. That's true. But how do you know? But can you tell your teams if you're on track?
Yeah. Really close.
Okay, cool. Is anyone feeling in danger of not meeting the commitment?
Well, quarterly planning, I mean, a commitment, I guess,
Well,
I
maybe
guess I'm
commitment's the
struggling
wrong
with
word, but
the goal.
it's a goal.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you try to hit that goal, right?
right.
Because you probably make, someone in the company's made promises, or, marketing is maybe prepared to market a new feature or something. So they're betting on all those goals that you laid out. So here at Nelnet, here are some of the data sources I've looked at. TFS is a big one. With the Great Lakes folks, Jira is where they store their project data. My team uses Pivotal Tracker. I've seen health survey results in the form of Excel files, and there's going to be plenty other data sources out there. So that's one of the challenges with metrics. This is a a rich target company that's got so much, a ton of different software targets. So we have no shortage of data. We just need the priority to pull that in and look at it and actually use it to drive behavior. So how do we get started as a company? If we want to go from where we are now to a more data-driven organization, basically we have so much data, it's really helpful if you actually know what you need. How are you going to use that data, and what behaviors do you think will modify once you find those answers and trends? Does anyone have any questions or anything to add to that? Well, maybe maybe you just want to find out, it could be a simple question: is my team actually meeting their commitments? So I would work backwards from that. That would be easier than just trying to ad hoc explore the data, because there's really so much of it. It can really be overwhelming. I spent about 6 weeks looking at the various data sources I listed, and it's pretty daunting for one person. So if you have a question, like if you gave me a question to answer, that would kind of drive me to go, that's that answer, and I can give you a targeted reply, quick response time too. So has anyone else in this room looked at TFS data or Jira project data? Okay. Any comments or anything to call out that you've looked at that would be useful for the room?
Sure. On one of two of my projects we were doing Kanban, and we were looking at blocks at the time, and we were able to go back and kind of do a root cause analysis, kind of figure out why we were trending upwards.
Cool.
And then go back and address it.
I think that'd be useful. Kyle, anything you want to call out?
So I have many years of experience using TFS and data from it. And the thing I would say about that, and I don't know how people in this organization use it, but it's so powerful and complex that it can be very overwhelming. So my comment would be, if you want to use a tool, learn how to use the tool, because it's really, if you just leap in, you may not make a lot of sense of what's in it.
Yeah, that kind of reiterates my point. I've been looking at TFS data, like the way Nelnet uses it, there's so many custom fields. And there's actually 2 installs of TFS here. We got 5280 and Nelnet Prime. They're actually quite different. I don't know the history behind both of those installations, but
Call me, I'll let you know.
okay. It makes aggregating data for projects in both of those instances really time consuming. Yeah. All right, lagging indicators. So I put this slide up just to take up space. I actually have a graphic that sums it up later. But at its core, it's basically just the output you produce. It's what you did historically. It's not good at predicting. It's basically going to confirm a pattern that's already established. And of course, it's like I said, it's only for historical stuff. It's not good at forecasting or projecting. So a great example of that is basically velocity, right? Items delivered in a release, or story points delivered in a release. Or the answer to this question: do you finish your commitments? All right, leading indicators. Now, this is the stuff I like. This is the more interesting ones to me. Basically, these things are the data points that will help you project out into the future. So it's leading enough to where if you read that metric and used it, you'd be able to pivot, make corrections, and maybe not slip on your deadline. So examples of that are, I like this one. This is an important one. You need a ready backlog of at least 2 to 3 iterations. If your team doesn't have that, you got to fix that as soon as possible. So, if you ask me, does my team have 2 to 3 weeks worth of backlog? I tell you, no, we don't. Paul, you're smiling. Do you have anything to add to that? Stephanie? Okay. Number of no blockers. So, John, I think your team's on the right track there. All right, here's the one graphic that sums it up really nicely. This could be your takeaway slide. Past performance, always lagging. Stuff that can help predict. That's a leading indicator. So, for example, you wouldn't want the person managing your 401k to use a bunch of lagging indicators. You wouldn't be happy. Right? And it's interesting. The more I delved into this topic, I noticed that in my research that pilots consider the speed of the aircraft a lagging indicator, especially if they're not using instrumentation, they're just using visual flight rules. They have markings on their windshield where they use those markings to line up with the horizon, and they consider speed or velocity of the aircraft as a lagging indicator. So if you're going too fast or too slow, it's already too late to make the adjustment for your aircraft. So, and that coincides with projects, right? Velocity is definitely a lagging indicator because you don't know what your velocity is until the end of the spring. Right? You don't know. Any comments on this, guys? Pretty straightforward, right? All right, time for another quote. Data analysis is an aid to thinking and not a replacement for it. So what do you guys think he means by that?
Just helps you make decisions.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Or maybe it should help start a conversation.
It's a conversation starter. That's a great one. So the more I thought about this, to me this, I think this is, he's basically saying, the data's great and all, and if you're looking at it, that's good, but the data by itself doesn't tell a story. You as the analyst have to put context into those trends, into those patterns, and into those values. So as a Scrum Master and as an ex-developer, I feel like it's the team's responsibility to control the narrative on their trends and numbers, right? Because if the team isn't explaining or giving context to the data, there's nothing to stop someone above us to make assumptions on our behalf. Anyone disagree with that? Or does anyone have anything to add to that? Has anyone experienced someone from higher up in the org chart digging into your team's trends and asking you what's going on. If that's ever happened, it's probably it's a lagging indicator. It means that you aren't controlling the narrative. And with data, that's important. So, like a single number or a single trend line doesn't mean anything. You got to add context to it. All right, some more vocabulary. Qualitative data. Does anyone want to take a stab at that? I know the definition's right there, but anyone with have a good example of some qualitative data that their team's using? I think Scrum Masters could answer this question, or give an example of a good place where they get qualitative data. Yes, Gary.
So it kind of ties into Chris's talk previously, where we see a lot of unplanned work come in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to meet our commitments, but it helps establish what's going on and why we want to do those goals.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Are there any developers in the room? Okay. Can you think of a session where you give your Scrum Master your thoughts on the current iteration or the completed iteration? Maybe a retrospective? Right, because qualitative data is subjective, right? It's basically prose, captures emotion. How about daily stand-up? Daily stand-up's a good one. So if you think about qualitative data, think about it in terms of when you were back in college. Basically, you have two types of tests: multiple choice or open answer essay. So those essay questions are basically you get a qualitative, subjective answer to that question. And if it was a math class, obviously that's an objective answer. There is a wrong answer. The interesting stuff about qualitative data is that it answers the why part because it's tied to emotion. So either one is not better than the other. So let's flip to quantitative. Obviously, quantitative is objective, emotionless. It answers how much and the what part of some question. If it's numerical, it's kind of a dead giveaway that this is a quantitative piece of data. And like I said, either one is not better than the other. You need a combination of both because you can crunch all the numbers and do all that work. But to give it context, you actually have to get quantitative data. All right. Next quote. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. I don't disagree with that. All right. So I will walk you guys through a demo, and I'm not going to waste your time with lagging indicators because you guys have a handle on that. I'm going to give you something that's predictive in nature and will help you guys for quarterly planning. Okay, I think I've removed every personal identifiable piece of information from this set of data. I got this out of TFS. This is not the real team name. Oh wait, you guys can't see that. Okay. Sorry, this is not the real team name. I took out the developers' names or lease IDs. So basically, this is, this dates back to March of 2016 for this particular team. And this is an active team because I believe they have a sprint in progress. Yeah, they've got one that'll close out, that just closed out. Okay, so like I said, velocity, a number of items finished, completed, the story points, those are all lagging indicators, right? But you can turn a lagging indicator into a leading indicator. Some nifty statistical tools. So I'll walk you through that. So I'm just going to create a pivot table out of this data. So Excel makes that really easy to do. I will pivot on team name, pivot on iteration, and also work highlight. And then you want to sum up, you want to aggregate the number of story points for each one of those stories. So let me collapse the table. You can see that, you see all the sprints for this particular team and the number of points delivered for that team. So they've got this release sprint that has no points. I'll just take that out. All right, so for this 3-year span, 3.5-year span, this team delivered 521 story points. So why don't I go ahead and get the average across those number of sprints. Excel tells me all right, 59 sprints in that 2.5 years. 59 sprints, that's my average. And also, so to turn this into a leading indicator, I need to get the standard deviation. And Excel also makes that really simple. Select all the data. All right, standard deviation, 2.5. So for these two things, I can create a very predictive model that would be useful for something like quarterly planning. So let's model out quarterly planning. So this particular team has 2-week sprints. So that would be a total of roughly 6 sprints, right? So I'm basically asking Excel, can you generate, can you simulate a sprint output iteration of the one? And I'm going to ask it to do a range.
Hey, Paul, it's pretty hard to hear in the back of the room.
Sorry about that. This is going to be hard to do because I only have to type with one hand. Is there a stand for this mic? Okay. Oh, I also have to feed it standard deviation. All right. So basically, Excel just simulated or modeled a sprint for iteration 1, and I want to repeat that for the entire quarter, right? So I'll just have Excel put that out. So what matters to me is the grand total. So that's super easy in Excel. I just get this summation shortcut at 0. So for this particular simulation, this team produced roughly 44 points worth of throughput. And it's random, so if I want Excel to do another simulation, I just get F9. So basically, every time you update the spreadsheet, it's going to generate a new random simulation for those 6 scripts. So what I really care about is, so what I'm going to demonstrate for you guys right now is a Monte Carlo simulation. I'm going to ask Excel to simulate 10,000 orders worth of work. So I'll do that now. Basically, I'm going to take this number and come down to the line. I want to do this now. All right. So I want 10,000 simulations. I just need to get this quick. Right, I got my simulations labeled. I've got 2 extra ones, I don't think that matters. So I'm going to show you something esoteric, and that's something that people don't usually use in Excel. It's called this what if analysis. You go to data table, all you have to do is pick some empty row where to store temporary data and hit enter. And what Excel just did was simulate 10,000 orders, essentially. And how do I make this useful? The answer is you got to create a histogram. Oh, that's all right. I actually have one of these already. So the result there was a histogram. And I want to go back to my PowerPoint. So, yeah, I couldn't produce it for you guys on the fly, but here's what I did earlier. So basically, it's a histogram. It's a normal distribution of 10,000 orders. So just a quick math, how many years is that? 2,500 years, right? That's 2.5 millennia. So, okay, how do I use this for planning? Basically, I label the quartiles. Basically, everything to the right of that is what I would have a probability of completing. So if I did, for this vertical line, if my team committed to 64, 65 points, I'd have a 10% probability of completing that. So the other spectrum, the other quartile, if my team commits to 41 points, I've got a 90% probability of hitting that mark. So what's the average? It's this 50 percentile right here. So if my team commits to 53 points, I've got a 50% chance of achieving that goal. So that's basically saying if your team is using your average velocity to plan out quarterly planning, you're not setting yourself up for success. So you could use this as so this is the tool that will help Scrum Masters negotiate with product owners. It will help product owners negotiate with clients that are asking for features. So basically, it's a way to communicate risk. If you ask my team to do more, it's going to add risk to the project, right? So my team already committed to this 50 percentile, and the product owner says, "Yeah, Paul, the team's just going to have to do more. I'm getting a lot of pressure here." I'm like, okay, that's fine. If you ask my team to do more, like maybe in this range, an additional 5 or 6 points, our success rate or confidence rate drops to like 25%. Right? So you gotta help own that risk if you're asking my team to do more. And a product owner can use the same tool to negotiate with upper management or whoever's asking them to do more. So any questions on this tool? So this was the punchliner money shot tool I was talking about. Does anyone think this is not something they could use for quarterly planning? Like, who's using average velocity right now to plan out the quarter? Expect a whole number. So, okay. So you're basically, it's a coin flip, right? Your team will probably not make that target, and there's probably going to be additional scope creep that lowers that probability of success even lower. Right? So what you really want to do is aim for the lower target, this 90th percentile, aim for less points, and then if they finish it, you can always add more scope, right? But there's no sense in committing to a large number of points, especially if it's your average, because one of the pull quotes, I don't have it on the slide, but estimates or plans based on the average fail on average. Makes complete sense. It's basically a coin flip. You want to account for risks and unknowns. So back to Chris's topic, the impact of unknown work. If you're already committing your team to a high amount of commitments, the unknown work is going to skew this to failure immediately. Yes, Chris.
So what do you suggest when teams do quarterly planning?
Do they have some historical data?
Running product, running teams, with either of them going into quarterly?
This is the first time they've worked together as a group. Well, I would just say you can use the 1 point per engineer, for a 2-week sprint. So that's 8 points per engineer, theoretically. And then if you want to add risk assessment, you just lower that down, maybe 6 or 7 points per engineer. But all right, we're out of time. But this was just a jumping off point. I'm going to schedule additional sessions because I know this is a topic that is probably near and dear to everyone in this room. I'm going to do a deeper dive on how to produce this yourselves. Would that be something you guys would be interested in?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, well, thanks everybody.